Well, Jack Dorsey's other company, Square, is seeking a new round of funding. We were very lucky enough to be able to talk with him back in December 2010. Lauren Good is questioning him. Let's hear what they say.
What's your justification for having this Square attached to someone's phone when they may be able to do that at some point with a mobile banking app?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is like everyone understands how to use a credit card. Mm-hmm. All the payers understand how to use a debit card. So my 87-year-old grandmother can use her credit card to pay a Square merchant. She doesn't have to learn any new behavior. She doesn't have to download any software. She doesn't have to buy any hardware herself. She can just use her card, and all the merchant has to do is get one of these free little devices.
Okay, that's Jack Dorsey of Square. Also, you may know him from Twitter with the lovely Lauren Good of the Wall Street Journal, now All Things Digital. We're going to go to Tricia Duryee of All Things Digital in Seattle to give us more on the story of today, which is basically that Square is seeking a valuation of up to, and get this, $4 billion. That's a lot of money. Trish.
You're right, Simon. And just to put it a little bit in perspective, just 10 months ago, this company raised money at a $1 billion valuation. So they've quadrupled the value of the company in just 10 months.
Well, it seems like an Instagram moment, right? I mean, so Instagram doesn't even have revenues, and if they're $1 billion, then clearly Square has to be much more since it actually has revenues, no?
Right, and I actually did some calculations to figure out what their revenues might be. It's actually pretty easy to figure out since they say that they have an annual run rate of 4 billion in transactions that are going over the Square reader. If you sort of back out how much they're paying, those merchants are paying to use the Square reader, you can figure out that their revenues are somewhere in the ballpark of like $120 million a year. Just to sort of put that in perspective, that's the kind of revenues that PayPal had when PayPal was sold to eBay in 2002 for just $1.5 billion.
But we are in a slightly different environment now. But also, you point out that some of that revenue, or maybe a big chunk of it, it goes over to the credit card processors as well. So that revenue isn't all really there.
That's correct. I mean, the merchants are paying about 2.75% to swipe the card. That money goes to Square, and then a large majority of that has to go directly to a Visa or MasterCard. They're the ones actually still doing the transaction in the background. Square is just the reader.
I know, it's very confusing because this is a company that has costs and revenues. We don't see that too often in digits in the tech world.
Now, I mean, a lot of them have costs and no revenues, but this has costs and revenues, and I think that makes Trish, that's a very good point, isn't it? I mean, this is a dynamic company. Are they going to be able to get a bulk discount from the actual credit card processors to help drive those costs down? Because that's the name of the game, isn't it? Widen those margins and then justify $4 billion.
Sure, and one of the interesting things here is one of its previous investors is Visa. So, there is some interest on the credit card's part for more credit card transactions to happen, right? So Square is not really competing with a Visa or a MasterCard. They're actually turning cash transactions into credit card transactions because they're tapping into a market that was mostly cash-based, a taco truck or, people that are doing cash transactions in person.
That's a great point, Trish, because half the time we're on here talking about some new mobile payment system where I'm going to have to put an app on my phone, and I just really, there's the whole myth out there that it's just way too hard to use your credit card and it's taking up too much room in your wallet.
So you like the swipe because that's one of the things that Lauren actually asked earlier in that interview to Jack Dorsey.
What I really like about that is that when somebody steals my credit card number, I don't have to pay anything. Like, you understand the fraud and all the security systems around a credit card is very understandable, and you as a consumer feel protected, right? So that is like moving to all my payments into Google Wallet, which sounds like theoretically could be interesting. I mean, all of us need a little more feeling of security about those kind of payment systems.
Security and privacy. I always feel like that when I'm around you. Trish, this is important, isn't it? I mean, the credit cards cost money to make. They individual, and they have to be sent out. But people like them. They feel more secure, like Julia. And yet, apps, once you've built it, every extra copy is free. So where does it play out? How does it play out?
In a way, Square is kind of old school and not high tech at all, right? I mean, they might go into some new markets at some point that will generate new revenue, but right now they're sort of just replacing that machine that you see at the register and you swipe your card through. That's not a whole lot of innovation, although it's happening on the mobile phone instead. I think we're going to see, this is just the Wild West, right? We've already talked about Google Wallet. There's a lot changing in the payment space right now. And clearly, Square feels the need to build up a huge war chest in order to fend off the competition coming from everyone like a PayPal or an Intuit.